Now we need some energy. Now we need to break that suspense we had earlier. How you feeling? What?
Good afternoon. Thank you everybody for joining us today for the webinar, America Can Stop Smoking. I'm Monica Garza, Manager of Procurement here at the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Just as a friendly reminder, this webinar is being recorded and as well as being streamed on Facebook. And if you have any questions, we encourage you to save them towards the end, utilize the chat box as well as the Q&A box. So without any further ado, to get us rolling, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce our fearless CEO, Ramiro A. Cavazos.
Well, thank you so much, Monica. It's always great to be on here with you. You know, the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is very fortunate to have PMI, Philip Morris International, as a corporate member. Every one of our members is a critical piece of the global economy, especially the American economy. The Hispanic American business community that we represent is composed of 5 million businesses, many C-suite executives within the Fortune 500 and larger. And of course, there are over 260 Hispanic chambers around the country, from Hawaii to Puerto Rico, Wisconsin to South Texas, and everywhere in between, that are very much involved with a free enterprise system, with opening markets around the world. And of course, big believers in competition is good for the bottom line. We want to keep flowing information and education. Our mission is to create an ecosystem for the whole country. There are over 30 million small businesses, and our small businesses are the future of the economy. It's a younger population. It's growing at 6 times the national rate. And so we're very honored to be here representing the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Monica and I and our small team, we worked very hard to make sure that we add value to everyone that's joining us today. PMI is one of those critical partners. It's a company that's gone through tremendous transformation and continues to evolve to be of service to our consumers and to provide information. I'm honored to be here today representing our board of directors. My name is Ramiro Cavazos, President and CEO of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And as Monica said, you know, we are here to share information, educate our community. And so I'm very honored to be here today to introduce, of course, the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and just do brief welcome remarks. But I'm honored to be here with a good friend, Hernan Albamonte. And of course, you all will hear from Keegan Linehan, who's an executive with Philip Morris PMI, and of course, Dr. Matt Holman, who also with Philip Morris will share more information on the scientific side about how we're evolving and providing alternatives to smoking. If we smoke, we know how hard it is to change that and to quit. But I know PMI is doing its best to make sure that we put every effort and every investment behind to use science and, of course, discipline and each other to overcome this environment where smoking has been a challenge for our businesses, our economy, and the health of our families. So without further ado, Monica, thank you for the great work you do, helping us put together these valuable corporate webinars. Again, my greetings to PMI on behalf of our membership around the country and for putting together this important webinar. Let me kick this back to you, Monica, and thank you again for your work, and to PMI for allowing me to be here with you.
Thank you, Ramiro. With that being said, we'll go ahead and start our presentation. I want to introduce Keegan Linehan, Vice President of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Philip Morris International.
Thank you, Ramiro, and thank you, Monica. On behalf of Philip Morris, we thank you all for letting us join you today. We are, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to present ourselves and the company and where the company is headed in a smoke-free future. I've spent my 20-year career in Washington, D.C., working in and with government, the healthcare sector, public policy, on disrupting the healthcare delivery system, from how it's paid for how it's covered, and how even people access it. I even had the privilege of being Chief of Staff at the Food and Drug Administration for the last few years. So when people ask me why I joined PMI, it's a constant question. A healthcare policy lead. Why go to PMI and why now? And I'd say if you had asked me 5 years ago, I probably would have been a resounding no for me to be here. But after the company approached me and learning about the transition, learning about their commitment to smoke-free products, I had multiple interviews with people that were part of the company's decision to make the transition, as well as people had come to the company for the transition. And really, after learning about it, there was just no way I could have said no. The opportunity that we have in the U.S. and globally to switch 1 billion global smokers to smoke-free products, a public health expert like myself just couldn't say no. PMI is not just leading towards a smoke-free future. It's not a business decision or a strategy. It's really revolutionizing the industry. PMI's global commitment to ending smoking and smoke-free products was something the public, yes, I said that already, sorry. We are leveraging our learnings on smoke-free products to expand into the public health space, past nicotine, and into health and wellness too. About PMI, let me tell you a little bit about us. First, what we are and what we aren't. PMI is often confused with Altria. While we were once part of the same company, we are not. We have been separated for about 15 years. We are an independent company, and to make things very clear, we do not and will not sell cigarettes in this country. Second, even though international is on our name, PMI is an American company, and we are headquartered in Connecticut and listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Third, to date, we are the only company within traditional tobacco industry to have committed to phase out cigarettes completely, encouraging adult smokers who would otherwise continue to smoke to switch to better alternatives. We have already seen significant success with over almost 20 million smokers converting to our IQOS product. Fourth and finally, PMI plays a leading role in our industry. We are the world's leading manufacturer of nicotine-containing products with over $31 billion in net revenue. Our global workforce is nearly 70,000 people, including about 1,000 researchers, development scientists, engineers, and technicians who are working on smoke-free products. Our products are sold in 180 markets, which includes 70 where we sell the smoke-free products. And we are growing. Last November, we completed our acquisition of Swedish Match, a top U.S. brand manufacturer of smoke-free products. Importantly, Swedish Match was the first company to receive FDA's modified risk tobacco authorization for their snus, a smoke-free oral tobacco product, which helps align with our mission to promote smoke-free products. We'll transition to a short video about the transition the company is making.
We are doing our utmost as an organization to replace cigarettes with better alternatives as soon as possible.
And Matt's next, right?
So, let's go back to where it all began, way back in 1847 in London's West End, when Mr. Philip Morris opened his tobacco shop on Bond Street. Fast forward almost 200 years, in 2016 came a dramatic change that made the headlines around the world. Change when you're in the lead may seem unwise, but when you can pivot to lead the change, it's revolutionary. As you can see, innovation is part of our DNA. We're committed to transforming for good. We've made multi-billion-dollar investments in smoke-free alternatives. Globally, our 70,000 employees, including 980 scientists, engineers, and technicians, are united in helping us deliver a smoke-free future. To date, 1,770 patents have been granted for PMI's smoke-free technologies. Our smoke-free products are available around the globe, with millions of adult smokers around the world using our smoke-free alternatives, out of which millions have made the switch and stopped smoking.
One day is coming very soon when I will have to remind people that Philip Morris used to sell cigarettes. That's my ambition.
PMI's smoke-free vision is being realized. Over 30% of our net revenue now comes from smoke-free products, and we aim to be a majority smoke-free company by 2025. So, how do we get there? You're about to find out.
Thanks. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Matt Holman.
Thank you, Keegan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'd like to just briefly introduce myself. I'm Matt Holman. I am the Vice President for U.S. Scientific Engagement and Regulatory Strategy at Philip Morris International. I just joined the company last year. Before joining last year, I'd spent 20 years at the U.S. FDA. Most recently, I was at the Center for Tobacco Products. I actually joined that center just after it was started and helped really build that center from the ground up. I left there as the chief scientist for the at the center, and as well as the director for the Office of Science. So my job was to really know the science, to advance the science, and to use the science to make regulatory decisions within the U.S. Around tobacco use. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of background. So why are we here? Why are we talking to you? There, as you can see from the slide here, this is the percentage of adults in the United States that smoke cigarettes. And as you can see, over the past couple of decades, we've seen tremendous declines in adult smoking rates in the United States. But still today, there are, about 30 million adult smokers across this country. And the impact of that is huge, as I'll talk about in a minute. But before I do that, I turn it over briefly to my colleague, Hernan.
Yeah, thank you. So welcome, everyone. My name is Hernan Albamonte. I lead the efforts of the company in the engagements with my community. I'm originally from Argentina, so I apologize for that. Nobody's perfect, as I always say, and don't blame it on my mother. Actually, she's Spanish. So the thing about being Argentinian and leading the efforts of engagement with the Hispanic community is something I'm very proud of. I've been working for this company for 15 years and had the opportunity of working in different countries like Mexico, Costa Rica, Switzerland, and now in the United States. And today I feel not only proud of the transformation that the company is doing, but also I'm proud of being able to serve my community and help adult smokers in the community to switch to less harmful alternatives. But before I give back the floor to Mr. Holman, you may be asking yourself why PMI transformation is relevant to the Hispanic community. And I'll try to give you a few numbers to put things into perspective and why this is a very important problem we all need to address. The first element is 10% of the smoking population represents the Hispanic community. And that number grows depending on the subgroup within the community. As we all know, our community is not a monolith, and you may find people from Puerto Rico having the highest smoking incidence compared to Dominican Republic people that have one of the lowest. Now, it is also challenging because depending on the socioeconomic background, there is a higher incidence of smoking rate, which obviously only exacerbates the problem. There is also a concerning issue with regards to quitting because at least 57% of Hispanic adult smokers have tried to quit according to CDC and information from last year. But unfortunately, and despite the access that should be available, it seems like for the Hispanic community, there are less odds of getting that access to that information compared to white smokers. And as Keegan and Matt mentioned, our objective is to make sure that no smoker is left behind, that all smokers have access to the information that is required to switch to less harmful alternatives. And my job is to make sure that this message is spread across the Hispanic community because it's very relevant. So with that perspective of how this impacts our community, I give it back to Matt, who will give us more insights into the scientific part of our transformation.
Thank you, Hernan. So as I was saying, 30 million adult smokers in the United States. What I want to do is show you now what does youth tobacco use look like in this country. These are the latest numbers from FDA and the CDC. If you look on this graph, you'll see that traditional tobacco products, cigars, cigarettes, smokeless, hookah, pipe, have all been declining over the past decade and are at quite low rates, historically low rates in the United States today. But that blue line at the top of the curve, that is vaping, or what we call e-cigarettes. And you can see that there was a sharp increase between 2017 and 2019. Fortunately, we've seen just a sharp decline on the backside of 2019 up until this year. Next up. And what's really important here is, let me make one caveat to the data. The 2021 data, we can't actually compare that data point to all the other data points. So without going into detail, there's some scientific reasons why that can't be compared. So if we just ignore that, we look at all the other data, and you look on the far right here at the 2022 numbers, you can see that we're back at the rate where that dashed line is of the numbers we saw in 2016 and 2017. And why is that important? In 2017, the FDA, when I was there, we announced this, what we called a comprehensive regulatory plan. And the idea here is that with, again, 30 million adult smokers, if we could get those smokers to move to less toxic, less harmful products such as vapes or other smoke-free products, then the public health gains would be huge. Unfortunately, then a year later in 2018, again, while I was at the FDA, we announced what we call the youth vaping epidemic and really highlighted the concerns about youth vaping. The good news is those 2018 numbers no longer exist, and we're back down to the 2019 numbers where, again, the agency was talking about this continuum of risk in moving smokers down from combusted cigarettes to smoke-free products. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of what I mean by smoke-free products, because I realize not all of you may be familiar with these products because they are much newer on the market. They've only been on the U.S. market for about a decade or less, depending on which product. But there are really three newer product types that we'd call smoke-free, meaning they're not burning tobacco. First are heated tobacco products. And these you can see on the far left here, there's a little filter like on a traditional cigarette, and you stick this heat stick into this device, and what it does is, rather than burn the tobacco with a flame, it actually just pulls hot air over the heat stick, and what that does is it pulls off the flavorants and all the volatile components that you would normally get in a cigarette without all the toxicants that you get from burning the tobacco. And then in the middle there are vapes or electronic cigarettes. Here you actually have a liquid that has a tobacco extract with some flavorings in it. And again, you heat that liquid up and then you would inhale the aerosol through that. And then lastly, on the far right here are the newest products, which are the oral nicotine products. These are pouches with basically a nicotine solid inside the pouch that you would put in your mouth as an oral product. And again, with all three types of product categories we're talking about here, rather than burning tobacco like you would in a cigarette and getting all the toxicants, again, you're heating it up in the first two, and in the third one, you're actually just putting it in your mouth to be absorbed. Now, what's really important, and again, this was the backbone of that 2017 plan that we announced when I was at the FDA, is this idea we call continuum of risk. So let me just walk you through the slide real quick. going from left to right, you go from non-combustible smoke-free products towards the combustible products like cigarettes, cigars, and pipes. On the y-axis going vertically there, you have risk. So the lower down or the low risk, the higher up. And what you can see here on the slide is that cigarettes, cigars, and pipes are not only much higher in risk than these smoke-free products that I just showed you in the previous slide, but they're about 100-fold more toxic. So it's not just a slight decrease in risk as you go from the combustible products to the smoke-free products. It's a gigantic drop down. And so this was really, again, the idea that FDA announced in 2017, that if we could get users of cigarettes, cigars, pipes, just to move to using these other nicotine-containing products that show on the left, then the public health gains would be tremendous across the country. But here's one of the problems, is that consumers don't really understand this idea of relative risk, the concept that I just showed in this previous slide, that there are different nicotine-containing products that all have different risk of harm to the users or to those standing near the user. So here's a survey that was done last year, and what this is, it asks basically how harmful, or do you think these substances are very harmful or not? And you can see, not surprisingly, on the far left, it's fentanyl, which in fact is very harmful. 90% of the survey participants identified fentanyl correctly as very harmful. You see right next to that is tobacco and nicotine. And then as you go further to the right here, you can see that THC, CBD, cannabis, other substances are much lower in risk. Unfortunately, this is not an accurate perception of risk. So for example, tobacco, at least if burned, can be very harmful, but nicotine by itself actually is relatively harmless to the user, probably similar to what nicotine would be. And so again, there's U.S. People across the United States don't really understand this idea of this relative risk of these different nicotine-containing products. Next slide, please. What's even worse is there are surveys, and I've just shown a couple here, that look at healthcare providers. So these are the folks that we all turn to for our healthcare advice. And what it shows is they also don't understand this idea of relative harm. And so 60% of physicians believe that all tobacco products are equal in risk. And I just showed you in earlier slides that actually isn't true. It's not even close to true. There are great differences in magnitude of risk of different tobacco products. And then the paper here on the right shows you that 80% of physicians believe nicotine itself causes cancer, and this is absolutely not true. And again, this is the crux of the announcement in 2017 by FDA, that nicotine actually doesn't cause cancer, doesn't cause a lot of the harmful effects from cigarette smoking, but yet our healthcare providers in this country believe that nicotine itself does cause cancer. So lastly, I just end up with, we need clear communication, and really the point is, if you don't smoke, you shouldn't start. If you do smoke, you should try to quit. And if you don't quit, you should change. You should change to one of these smoke-free products that I showed on earlier slides.
Thanks, Matt. So what is a smoke-free future, and how do we get there?
I think we are now looking for the answers to have a better life being a smoker. And
Sorry, we're going to go back to that video later and jump back into what is a smoke-free future and how do we get there.
So yeah, while we go to Keegan's presentation, I guess you're going to enlighten us about how we access or how we make sure that we accelerate a smoke-free future in the United States, right?
Absolutely, yes. There are more than 1 billion smokers in the world, and despite warnings, public service campaigns focused on quitting, and a growing number of anti-tobacco policies, the World Health Organization does not expect that number to significantly decrease in the coming years. When it comes to getting smokers to quit, the current tools alone are not enough. At PMI, we have made it our mission to replace cigarettes with smoke-free alternatives as soon as possible. This will take time, but we are making significant investments to accelerate this transition. To date, we have invested over $9 billion into the research and development of innovative smoke-free products that can help current smokers quit. PMI has set an ambitious goal of achieving 50% of our net revenue from smoke-free products by 2025. This past year, we reached 30%. This target demonstrates our commitment to accelerating the transition toward a smoke-free future. We are working every day to give millions of smokers a choice between smoking and alternatives that are less harmful yet satisfying. How to advance a smoke-free future in the U.S.? While PMI is leading the way to announce a smoke-free future, we can't do it alone. To achieve this ambitious goal in the U.S., we have to work together. We can start by ensuring that we minimize underage use. PMI supported raising the national minimum age to purchase tobacco products to 21, and this was enacted into law in 2019. Minors should not use or have access to any tobacco or nicotine-containing products. Responsible marketing practices must be implemented, age verification technology incorporated, and increased monitoring enforcement deployed. We also have to embrace alternatives, as my colleague Matt just mentioned. As a society, we need to accept the science and promote transitioning smokers to smoke-free products. Other nations are leading the way by promoting that smokers use e-cigarettes to quit smoking, which is twice as likely to succeed as those who don't. Americans are not getting that message. We have to modernize the FDA. While technology and innovation continue to advance, FDA is not keeping pace. Under FDA's pre-market tobacco application process, reviews of new products are required by law to take no more than 180 days, but on average, it takes over 800 days. Think about the advances on your phone has made in 3 years. Smokers continue to be faced with limited options other than smoking cigarettes. We also need risk-based taxation. The FDA recognizes a continuum of risk and nicotine-containing products, and so should our tax policies. Government should be incentivizing, not discouraging, adult smokers to switch to smoke-free products. Lastly, we should be addressing misinformation, as my colleague just stated. A majority of Americans, including healthcare professionals, believe nicotine is a danger for smoking-related disease. This is simply not true. Combustion is the problem. Government agencies and public health community need to be honest about these products and share in the science. And this should be an education about the role of nicotine and encourage switching. We'll break for a quick video.
I think we are now looking for the answers to have a better life being a smoker, and if vape is a good solution and you can scientifically prove it, ¿por qué no?
I want to stop smoking cigarettes.
Do I think vapes are better than cigarettes?
I don't know. Figuring out alternatives has been a challenge.
I think it's too much information. Sometimes it can be confusing.
So I guess now we go back to Monica as we concluded the part in which we share a bit of information, and now we open it, I guess, to the public to make any questions. Or Monica, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them this way.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Hernan. So again, I encourage anybody, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat or the Q&A box. I do have a couple of questions to kick us off. Keegan, you discussed the pillars for advancing a smoke-free future here in the U.S., and one of those pillars pertains to the modernization of the FDA. Could you please elaborate on what this modernization might entail?
Yes, I'm happy to start it. I'd love my colleague Matt, who spent a lot more time at the FDA, to jump in too. But as I mentioned, right, there are timetables around product authorization. So when a company like PMI submits an application for a new product that we'd like to put on the market, they're required by law to get back to us within 180 days, and it's taking well over 800 days in those circumstances. So they're leaving adult smokers with limited options and choices for FDA authorized products, especially that might have a modified risk claim. So it's an even better product than just having a PMTA, which is a typical application process. I would say, and Matt spent 20 years at the agency, 10 working within the center. I think he could probably speak to maybe some of the additional modernizations that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the agency, the Center for Tobacco Products, during the 12 or so years that I was there, I mean, they talked a lot about, innovation, and the opportunity for smoke-free products to help smokers move down that continuum of risk, therefore, reduce the death and disease caused by tobacco products. I think Keegan really hit on one of the big issues, which is right now the agency has a backlog of 300,000 applications, or there's 300,000 products, some of which might actually be very helpful to smokers to move to less harmful products that the agency is still pending review on and has been for years now. And so getting through that backlog so that these innovative products that might be able to help smokers can get into their hands more quickly, I think is probably the biggest thing that the agency could do to help public health further than they are helping them today.
And so while we continue to push not only for that modernization, whether that's on Capitol Hill or with local politicians, encouraging the smoking community that wants alternatives and safer alternatives to engage in that process as well.
Yeah, and I would say the other piece that I would add there is just the communication coming from the agency, right? We've all, I think, touched upon this this afternoon already, the need to really communicate clearly. I mean, healthcare providers don't understand, let alone the average smoker understands this idea of relative risk, and that there are different nicotine-containing products that have different levels of risk to their health. The agency could be and should be doing more, quite frankly, to communicate that to all audiences, healthcare providers, consumers, retailers, et cetera. And I think, again, there's more opportunity there to do good for public health that the agency could be leveraging.
Yeah, and I think just to add, I think everyone has a role to play in all of this. We at our community, we can also play a role, as Keegan mentioned, by making sure that the agency is aware about the need to accelerate the processes, and also importantly to make sure that everyone requests that these products and information about these products is made available for adult smokers, because in the end, if these products are not available, people will continue to smoke. And I think Keegan made it very clear, our ambition is to stop selling cigarettes in the very near future. So we all have a role to play.
Awesome. A question that came in through our chat box says, has there been any noticeable impact on the pandemic on the transition to a smoke-free future, either on consumer behavior or on PMI specifically?
Yeah, I can talk about, I showed you the youth vaping numbers in the US, and what happened is that we saw youth vaping go down considerably during the pandemic. We think there are other factors at play, not just the pandemic, but obviously with the social isolation, there was much less youth use. But the good news is that it didn't rebound post-pandemic. And so there was a concern by, I think, all public health scientists in the space that with this decline in youth vaping during the pandemic, that we would see a sharp increase after the pandemic, but yet we haven't seen that happen. And so that's really been one of the most positive changes that we've seen from a public health perspective in this space when it comes to the impact of the pandemic.
Thank you. Another question for you specifically, Dr. Holman. During your presentation, you stated that 80% of physicians believe nicotine causes cancer. However, based on your presentation, it appears that this is a misperception. Can you shed some light on how this misperception came about, like how we can address this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a number of reasons why there's this misperception. I think most of it's historic. I mean, I think, if you think back even 15 years ago, these smoke-free products that we were talking about today didn't exist in the US or even, anywhere around the world. You had the traditional tobacco products, and cigarettes being by far the most commonly used. And so there was just decades and decades of education about the harms of smoking and the need to not start smoking, and if you do smoke, to give up smoking. And I think as part of that education, there was also this information around nicotine and how nicotine is so addictive, and it's the most addictive component, at least chemical, within cigarette smoke. And because sort of those two things were going in parallel, this talk about nicotine and the addictive properties and just the general harm of cigarette smoke to a user's health, they got sort of combined into sort of the same message or an overlapping message. And I think that's really mainly what's happened here is the decades of discussion of really nicotine with harms, that there's been this maybe not intentional linking of nicotine to the toxic effects of cigarette smoke, and that's what we're trying to decouple. And as Hernan said, it's not just up to PMI or industry. It's not, I think there's a lot of different stakeholders that have a role to play to sort of disentangle nicotine from these other harmful effects that we see from cigarette smoke. And again, just to say, I mean, the FDA has acknowledged this in 2017, and since then, that nicotine by itself is relatively harmless. It is really all the other chemicals that consumers are inhaling into their lungs in cigarette smoke that's causing the cancer, that's causing the heart disease, that's causing the stroke, etc. And we need to do a better job of providing clear information, clear communication around that. But we're really trying to correct this misunderstanding that's existed for decades. And so, you know, I think it's a challenge that we all have to sort of tackle together, because it's going to take, I think, quite an effort to really to do that. But again, I think healthcare providers, I mean, they are the people we turn to for trust information about, you know, how to stay healthy. And if, you know, we have to really start by helping them understand, you know, the truth about nicotine and the other components of tobacco products, of tobacco smoke.
Awesome. Well, continuing, you also mentioned some good news about the declining youth use of all product types. What are the reasons behind the success, and why do you think it's not getting much attention or discussion?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's really good data in the U.S. and outside the U.S. that shows that a lot of kids that are smoking are going to vaping, and a lot of kids, quite frankly, that would have picked up a cigarette never picked up a cigarette. Instead, they went to vaping. So there is a bit of a substitution effect, where youth use of cigarettes is now displaced by youth use of vapes, which from a public health perspective is positive in terms of the relative risk, again, on that continuum of risk where vapes lie versus the cigarettes. But I think there's also education, right? I mean, I ended my presentation with sort of these 3 points around, you know, smoking. There's a lot of education of youth, and they're understanding they're understanding the harms of tobacco product use, and they in fact may be some of the subset of the population that best understands this idea of relative risk, to be honest, compared to some other members of the general population. And so I think there is this awareness and this intentionality by youth to, if they're going to use a nicotine-containing product, to go through to use the least harmful types of products. But also, I think relatedly, because there was this really steep increase in youth use between 2017 and 19, that became sort of the focal point of a lot of communication to the general public. And because of that sort of concern around that vaping, you lost a lot of the other messaging that should have been going along with it. In fact, the significant declines in smoking, most of the population doesn't know, because there's just been such an emphasis on the youth vaping. But in fact, there is a lot of good news. Again, if you look at that graph, all traditional tobacco use is at historic lows. And that's really good news that's often not recognized or celebrated, and it should be.
Yeah, perhaps what I would also add is, and to re-emphasize what Keegan mentioned, there is no tolerance for us for underage usage, right? So we received these numbers and the decrease with a lot of excitement. A lot needs to continue to be done, because these products have not been delivered or manufactured for youth. These products are only intended for adult consumers who cannot quit or don't want to quit and want to switch to less harmful alternatives. So one minor is way too many, and this is why for us, the tolerance is zero, and we continue to work in ways in which we can improve how to tackle this issue with authorities both at federal, state, and local level.
And just to add on that, you know, the one product that we're hoping to bring to the market next year in the U.S., our IQOS product, you know, we worked really hard to make sure that that product would not appeal to youth. And the FDA actually looked at that in the application and assessed the data around that and saw globally, you know, while we have over 20 million IQOS users, you're not seeing an increase in youth. Youth is not taking to the product. So we tried to really craft a product that's specific to the adult smoker to get them to switch from a public health perspective, not about gaining potential, you know, new users, which is, you know, it's been a solid, you know, I think for us shows a level of credibility that this is an issue that we care deeply about.
Oh, no, absolutely. And like I said, I know plenty of people who personally have quit smoking the last couple of years, so it is something to be celebrated. And this is open, I guess, to Adnan or Keegan. Could you share some differences in how small businesses can help in the promotion of the tobacco harm reduction versus large national corporations who have more resources? In addition, could you draw any same practices?
Want to start?
Look, I think, as I mentioned before, everyone has a role to play, and every single member of the society can change the current situation. I can give you some examples of other markets where we have seen a lot of progress, for example, from small businesses, particularly barbershops, beauty salons, where adult smokers spend a lot of time, and it is their hairstylers or the barbers who are incentivizing them to switch to these less harmful products. But again, going back to the idea that everyone has a role to play, I think that each and every single one of us can activate this by engaging with our representatives, by demanding access to these products, and by spreading the word that, in a nutshell, there are less harmful alternatives than conventional cigarettes, and that, I mean, the best option is always to quit, but if you cannot, you should switch as soon as possible.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think, you know, education and awareness is something anyone can do. You guys have learned today about where the risk is and what the risk continuum is, and just talking about that publicly with your friends and family that are smokers, that smoke cigarettes, that are looking for alternatives. And then same thing, kind of encouraging, demanding our public health officials, give us the right information, tell us about the authorized products, tell us about what carries modified risk. Talk to us about the dangers of nicotine versus smoking or smoking versus nicotine. I think that's a message that's, you know, clearly not being received, and I think as individuals and Americans, we should be demanding that.
Absolutely. Are there any other countries that have embraced tobacco harm reduction more than the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few countries. I'll just pick the United Kingdom, for example, has really embraced the science around vaping, and has their public health bodies, including, you know, governmental public health bodies, have really included smoke-free products as part of their smoking cessation toolkit. So alongside with a nicotine replacement therapy like like a nicotine lozenge or nicotine gum, they've actually included vapes as a tool that smokers should use to help them give up smoking. And in fact, they've seen pretty significant numbers of smokers completely put down their cigarettes for less harmful smoke-free products. But again, it's very clear communication coming from different players, not just the public health agencies inside the government, outside, but as Hernan said, just a sort of even grassroots sort of sharing of information about the relative risk of smoke-free products compared to cigarettes. And again, they've seen this. I mean, I think the longest standing example we have is in Sweden. In Sweden, a few decades ago, it's been about 4 decades really, they started seeing a big switch from smoking to snus use. So snus is this particular type of oral product, again, pouch like the product I showed on the slide earlier that you put in your lip. It's very low intoxicants. And amongst the men in Sweden for the last 30, 40 years now, they've seen a lot of them going from smoking to snus use, and they've seen really quite dramatic impacts on, for example, rates of cancer amongst the men in that country. And so there's sort of population level measures that you can do, and really seeing pretty profound public health gains with just, again, switching from one nicotine-containing product, i.e. cigarettes, to another, snus. What can happen when you see that those large numbers of smokers making that switch.
Awesome. Mr. Gomez here in the chat is asking, what would you hope to accomplish, businesses or in philanthropy, for the inner cities of America?
I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the question, Monica? We could barely
Broke
hear
up a
you.
little.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a question from the chat from Mr. Gomez. What would you hope to accomplish for small businesses or philanthropy organizations in the inner cities of America?
I mean, I think to start with, the people were educated around the products that exist and the risks that are associated with them. And then what that does when it comes to kind of general health outcomes for their employees, themselves and their families would be, I think, a starting point for us.
Yeah.
Awesome. The last question that we have on here, and this is for you, Keegan. If you had to choose only one message and one call to action for all the attendees that we have here today to take home, what would they be?
So it's an interesting opportunity, right? President Biden gave his State of the Union speech a few weeks ago, and his commitment towards ending cancer, and he's made smoking a pillar of ending cancer. So I think right now it's an opportunity for all of us to make good on talking to our politicians. If you're committed to this, are you creating the types of policies and messages around getting people off cigarettes and quitting, and alternatives a part of that message, or is it strictly just quitting? So I think we have a really interesting time to kind of call on this administration and say, how serious are you? And if you're serious, and why aren't you moving the ball when it comes to smoke-free products?
Awesome. Well, that was our last question. I want to open the floor to y'all for some closing remarks.
Great. You guys have any?
No, I just want to thank the chamber for the opportunity, to all the people that have connected and gave us the opportunity to introduce ourselves, because in a way we haven't been in the market for over 20 years, and we're different from the companies that currently operate in the United States. And I look forward to connecting with everyone that is interested in advancing our smoke-free future within the Hispanic community. As we all know, within the community, families are very important for us, and this is always the best place to start. We all have an adult smoker who wants to quit, and I think the best way is always to encourage them to switch to less harmful alternatives. And we can do this with many other people as well. So thanking everyone for joining us, and looking forward to connect with all of you, perhaps at the Legislative Summit or any other activity that the Chamber organizes.
Any closing words, Matt?
Nope.
Yep, I just want to echo what Hernan said. We really appreciate the opportunity to present to you all today. We look forward to partnering with you in any opportunities going forward. It's a great opportunity for us to learn more about your communities and how we can assist in delivering this smoke-free future. And look for only more positive things to come from PMI when it comes to smoke-free alternatives. Thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hernan, Dr. Holmes, and Keegan. It was a pleasure hosting this webinar with you guys. It was very informative. And again, we look forward to growing our relationship with PMI, and hopefully we'll see you at our Washington, D.C. Legislative Summit coming up March 20th through the 22nd. So if you haven't registered, we highly encourage you to do so. It'll be really informative. We have some great presentations coming up, so feel free to reach out to us for more questions. So with that being said, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you took away some key information that you can implement in your life and a healthier lifestyle, and continuing the mission that PMI has to reduce the use of tobacco. So thank you so much again, everybody. This is being recorded, so it will be posted on our YouTube channel, and it is currently will be streaming live on Facebook for immediate access. But again, thank you to everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.